listening to Jaime's Local Love, the podcast, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.
Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jaime Soretta. On this podcast, we celebrate everything local. Our next guest creates something that many of us carry every single day, have a personal attachment to, and that is, of course, our handbags. So may I introduce Jennifer Boone-Lauren of Soul Carrier. Hello, Jen.
Hello, Jamie.
It's great to see you.
So wonderful.
I mean, we're old-time friends. We got to let the people know. We've known each other for quite some time now.
Several years.
Tell me about what you create.
So I create handbags, accessories specifically made out of leather. I'm fascinated by textiles, so I like to find something unique and be like, could I turn that into a handbag? So the bags started, they were made out of recycled rag rugs, have evolved it to leather, and now I'm looking at using the same leather that footballs, basketballs, and baseballs are made out of.
Okay, so we're moving into the sports world.
Yes.
and well, I guess before we go forward, let's go backward, because you're an Arizona girl. Tell me where you grew up, where you went to school.
Born and raised in Arizona. I was homeschooled. We lived up in like Shea and Tatum area. And went to Arizona State University and then left for the shining lights of New York to go to design school at Parsons and spent 4 years in New York City.
So you went to ASU first?
I did.
For 4 years?
For 4 years,
Did your degree there? What was that degree?
In marketing, WP Carey. Yeah, love it.
And then what made you want to go ahead and get a second degree, right?
I've always loved design. Now, my dad wanted me to be a lawyer and kind of go down that path. But during my junior year of college, I lost both of my parents in a car accident. And so I thought a way to honor them would be to go to law school and kind of fulfill that dream. But it was his dream. I love creativity. I love design. I love fashion. And so I started looking into programs, found Parsons, and went on a tour of New York City, and I fell in love. It was a tour of the whole fashion industry. I'm like, I have to apply. So I did. I got in, and then I did their 2-year program. And then I stayed 2 years after I graduated and worked in the industry. But Arizona called me back. I'm a Southwest girl at heart.
No doubt. I mean, it's so wonderful to be home. And I'm so sorry about your parents.
Thank
and
you.
It was a last comment that your mother made to you that kind of, I guess, sparked that change of your career. What was that?
Yeah, she literally was turned around. She was in the front seat and she said, "Where do you want to go?" And I never really got to answer that question. She didn't get to hear my answer because the tires blew out in my dad's SUV. And we flipped multiple times and my mom was taken instantly. And my dad made it to the hospital, but then he didn't make it past that. But my sister and I crawled out of the car with like barely any injuries. But this kind of gigantic thing had happened. And I thought, you know, I could let my life go to nothing and kind of wallow in being a victim, or I'm still here for a purpose. And I kind of kept coming back to like, well, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And it's not law school. It's something to do with creativity and design and fashion. And so set off for New York and made those goals happen. And then came back to Arizona. And at that time, Barneys was opening. And I was part of an art event at Fashion Square. They gave locals blank mannequins. And they said, take this mannequin, turn it into art. It'll be on display, you know, the week of Barney's grand opening. And I collaborated with a close friend from ASU. He's an architect. And we went to the dollar store and we found these rag rugs that are made out of like recycled, very vibrant, you know, $1 rag rugs. We covered the mannequin in that. And my friend's like, why don't you do something with this material? It's so cool. And that was the very, very, very beginning of Soul Carrier, of like trying to take these rag rugs and turn them into bags and accessories, and then have evolved it to actually using real leather, having an actual manufacturer, and now being carried at Four Seasons and the Beverly Hills Hotel, high-end resorts and spas at JW Marriott, Mountain Shadows. A lot of those are the places. The Princess. Love the Princess. Yes. So either in the spa boutique or hotel gift shop has kind of been where we have found our niche. And I love it. I love that. I love calling on these gorgeous resorts and spa directors are wonderful. Just such a kind community. So it's fun to sell there.
How were you able to get into these high-end markets?
The beautiful thing about Arizona is we have so many amazing resorts, like right in our backyard. So literally just pounding the pavement and like walking into the shops, calling on them. And in that world, once you get in, it's a very close-knit world. And so often a spa director will leave Four Seasons to go to Marriott or Hyatt. And if they like the brand, they'll take me with me. And then at a certain point, you just begin to know everyone in the industry. And then I started going to events like conferences. There's a conference called iSpa and Global Beauty. And that caters to that world where they bring vendors.
A big market. So it's a big
Yes,
market where
totally.
all those shoppers can come in and fill their spa boutiques.
Exactly.
Ooh, how
Yes.
fun. I would like to go to that.
Yes.
Take me with you. I will carry the bags.
Yes. Some of them, and then you get the samples, which are
yes.
phenomenal. All the great eye cream and hand
When did
cream.
they happen? Is this a Vegas thing?
It is Vegas. They kind of, once you get into that world, you realize it's a really cool, big niche part of the industry. But resorts, what I love too is like they have a different clientele every night. So the shops, in fashion, they're always wanting what's next, what's new, when's spring, summer coming. With spa, they're like, our client's different every other day. So we don't need everything to always be super
Like
fashion
turning.
forward. Turning. If you have something good and it sells, we'll keep bringing you in. And I like that. It's a little more of that slow fashion, a small batch. You're not cranking out. When you're a small business, that's tough,
Right.
to keep up.
And you are focused on the materials that are substantial and, vetted.
Totally. Right now, this has been a dream. I'm also teaching at Arizona State University, which I love.
How is that to be back on campus?
It is so. What's neat, Jamie, is that when I went to WP Carey, it was the Tempe campus, and ASU's fashion school is in downtown Phoenix. So it's a very city vibe, which reminds me of my Parsons days because you're among all the tall buildings, that urban setting. So I teach merchandising and fashion entrepreneurship classes, and it's just a thrill getting to mentor the students. It keeps me kind of on track of what's hip and new and what's trending.
You bring home a new slang.
Oh, totally. Who the latest influencer is. Yeah. But through one of my colleagues, I met a guy who's local. He used to work at Louis Vuitton, and he has a small shop here in town. And he is now going to handle all my production. And the amazing thing, Jamie, is like one day I had to drop something off at his house. And I was like, you literally are 2 streets away from my home. So we're like, we're neighbors. And then the fact that he has a shop here in Scottsdale, like I can run over. I can really be involved. Whereas when it's overseas, you wait for it to arrive and then you're like, oh, shoot, like that's not what I wanted.
Yeah. And I want to talk about those different, because for people listening who might be thinking, I have something I want to create, I want to build. How do I find those makers? How do I find those manufacturers? How did you find that person overseas or wherever it was?
The ones overseas, it was a lot of trial and error. And, before Armand, people would ask me like, oh, it'd be so cool if it was made in the USA. And I was like, it would. I'm all for that. But I pounded the pavement in New York City, in LA, in other places around the country. And I could never find someone that would want to take me on at the price point that the brand could bear. And they had huge minimums and it was just difficult. So I did do a lot of manufacturing in León, Mexico. They were great while it lasted. They did start upping their minimums. And again, you're not able to babysit it. So it's, I'm at the end of kind of, they call it a cutting ticket when they do manufacturing, right? So it's like a bigger brand might come in and I'm the baby brand. So they're going to fit me in and I'm not really going to be catered to or high priority. Exactly. So it's tough. And when you're just not there to watch it, we're here now that Armand's local. I can run over, he's like, do you want to see the zipper? And, within the day we can make a decision where when it's overseas, it's tough. But it didn't, Armand's like several decades into doing this. And it was a dream that I met him, and I met him through a fashion colleague. But that was just kind of serendipitous. But it was a lot of trial and error, meeting people, going down the road. And I tell my students, I'm like, life is not linear. Like you will plant a seed and often it doesn't blossom for a long time. But you have to keep trying. in this day and age of like, we always see the instant like success, but we don't realize it was like 10 years in the making of instant success.
Yeah. You always love the overnight, what do they say? Overnight success story. And it was 10 years later. It was 10 years later for most people. And I think it's great that you are telling the students that life is not linear, because I think a lot of people get discouraged before they should. And, it's not always every single, what is it, that who moved my cheese? I mean, you run into some closed doors and you have to keep on looking.
Totally. And I tell the students, I'm like, and it's okay to go down one path and then pivot. You may pick a major or a career and you're like, this isn't it. But I think we do students and all of society a disservice being like, you have to like, whatever you pick, that's it forever and always, right? Like that's just not life. And then it's harder when the hiccups come because you're like, wait, but this was supposed to be it. But then when you realize, oh no, that, it kind of unfolded in a way I didn't want, but what can I learn from it? And then where do I go from here, and not getting so hung up that it didn't keep going down that same path.
Yeah. Someone once said to me, life is supposed to be challenging. I was like, oh, darn it.
Darn it.
But I was thinking it was going to be fun and easy. But no, it is not linear.
And there's something I think there's a grace and a levity in what that person told you, right? Because then you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Glennon Doyle, and she's an author married to Abby Wambach. And she often says, like, the thing we get wrong is that we thought it was supposed to be easy and smooth. But when we can relax into like, no, part of the ride is going to be bumpy, then there's less like, oh my gosh, what's happening? It's just like, oh, this is just par for the course.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to be.
Totally.
And then that 10-year-old seed blooms, and there you go. And it's, we told the people we're friends, and it feels like it's been so rewarding for you to be back at school with these kids. How has this changed your mentality as an entrepreneur?
Oh, in so many, I have hope for the next generation. Like, people always tend to complain about those younger, but these kids are bright and they're curious and they're hardworking. And there's things in place that we didn't have when we were in school, AI and ChatGPT and Instagram. And so I think there's different variables and things in the space that we didn't have. So that does change them and how they act. But it is just the most rewarding thing to like the ones that get it. And then I can see what I told them, like I've had ones that have gotten internships or they'll write me the sweetest notes. And it's just like, wow, like, and it's a once a week class. It's 3 hours, but to realize that once a week class, like, really made an impact.
You're watering those seeds.
Watering those seeds.
They're so cool.
They're really, really special. Some of them have asked me to be on their honors thesis committee. So I get to like go on this journey as they kind of do an additional project so they can graduate with honors and mentor them. And it's awesome. And when you see the things you tell them that they implement it, like they'll share their portfolios with me. And I was like, maybe we should remove the pictures of you, out partying in a bikini. Like,
that's a good idea.
Not necessarily.
Just for the thesis.
And then they'll respect it. And then they'll send me the revision. I'm like, okay, they got it. In the suit. Let's go with something a little more professional.
God bless us all, right?
Hey, they're young, they're learning, and they're green, and that's okay.
Well, I think of myself in my 20s, and just, you didn't know better. You didn't know. God bless my mentors as well, who said, don't wear the crop top to the internship, et cetera, et cetera. Not that ever happened. But let's talk about, we said overnight success story at 10 years. How old is your business now?
What's wild is, so my niece is going to be 15 on the 29th of June. And prior to doing handbags, I was in New York City. Gossip Girl was really big, the TV show. And I was making these wild headbands that look like the English fascinators, which are those hats. Yes. And I got them into Henry Bendel, and they threw me a whole trunk show. I had my designs on mannequins that faced Fifth Avenue. I had like a plaque. At the time, it wasn't called Soul Care. It's called Jennifer Page Designs, Headwear and Accessories for the Posh Prepster.
Ooh, wow. That's a title.
That's a title. So my very first the first day of the trunk show was the day my little niece was born. So I kind of had formed an LLC and then had started kind of the makings of a business, and it was headbands, had the trunk show. And Jamie, I literally remember standing in front of the windows on Fifth Avenue. If you know anyone that's been to New York City, like those windows are like amazing. And I shot a picture. This is going to date myself. It was not on my iPhone. It was a digital camera.
Oh my God. They're back to using those. I mean,
I know that going back to the kids, they love Polaroids, landlines, like digital cameras. So I shot a picture and I captured a yellow taxi going by, and it was just the coolest shot. And I was looking at it, I'm like, I feel complete. I've graduated from Parsons, interned for Oscar de la Renta, got to go to like Christmas parties with Marc Jacobs, worked at American Eagle in pre-production, did a lot of awesome things, but I'm like, Arizona's calling me home and I want to see my niece born. And so I moved home, and that summer is when the woman who was kind of coordinating the whole Barneys mannequin art project, it's like, will you come help me? So I was like, yeah, I'll come like work for you. I need to figure out what I'm going to do in Arizona. And that's what Soul Carrier was born out of. And that was 2009. So fall of 2009 was the Barneys event. And then kind of that following year started to think, I think there might be more traction with handbags and headbands. So, which headbands are coming back, but I think it's even more niche.
Well, we all need a handbag every single day. And for people like me who are looking to buy local, there are not a lot of options. So I love that you're an option for a locally made and created handbag. So let's talk about what you have here. Let's start over with this black bag right here and just kind of talk around the table.
Yeah. So the black one is my bucket bag. These are all genuine leather. The one over there is a carryall, and it's made out of cowhide. I love the cowhide because my brand called Soul Carrier is a lot about kind of revolving around that question, where do you want to go? And then another tagline is for your journey. And that idea of we're all unique souls. And like you listen to your heart and your intuition, because there's so much noise. There's so much that the world will tell us, do this, don't do this. But I'm like, no, what does your soul tell you to do? And so how that reflects in the cowhide, every cowhide's unique, right? So some will be more speckled, some will be more black, white. And I love that that's a representation of kind of the messages I want my brand Soul Carrier to represent. So I've got a lot of cowhide, some cowhide with little sparkles, some little coin purses. And then the one in the middle, that one was literally made out of the exact same leather. I was able to source it from the tannery in Chicago. That sends that same hide to Wilson, who makes the Wilson footballs.
Okay, so we're talking about this burgundy.
This kind of burgundy, Yes. And it's that pebbly. And so then they also send the same leather to make the Wilson basketballs that are used in the NBA, football, and then they have beautiful baseball leather. So I've realized I have a lot of customers who are married to pro ball players. I love the Suns. Boyfriend's a huge sports fan. So I'm like, I like to I tell my students this, pay attention to what's happening in the zeitgeist, right? And if you can see patterns.
In the what?
In the zeitgeist, kind of the what's happening in pop culture and just kind of
what
all
is this
around.
Word you're saying?
And so it's called Zeitgeist, Zeitgeist, Zeitgeist. I think it's German, but it's kind of what's happening in the culture, right? What's moving on a big level as far as patterns and trends. Like last year, the Barbie movie, right? So then everything's pink and Barbie. And so things that are happening in entertainment or sports or politics, how that impacts
what we
trends.
Want to wear and carry with us.
Yes, totally.
And then, wife or girlfriend of a ball player might want to have the basketball purse, etc.
Yes.
And this was sparked by the Super Bowl coming to town, right?
It was sparked by, and again, that love of interesting textiles. So I was like, oh, Super Bowl's coming. I wonder if I could make anything out of football leather. I wonder if that's available. And then get online, do a bunch of digging, find the guys that actually sell those hides. And it's the exact official. The Wilson balls will have a little stamp in it that it's the official, but you can just buy a whole sheet of this to do anything and people will craft with it. And so then I sent it down and my manufacturers made the clutches. And now, being that I have baseball player wives, they're like, could you do something with baseball leather? And like, I totally could. And I love that idea of like, let's take something. My mind often works, and I'm like, you see a thing and I'm like, that's cool. Could I turn that into something else?
Right.
And so could I turn the baseball leather into a bag? Could I turn the cowhide, into a bucket bag? So working on making bags that have that nod to that whole sports industry. And then I got to meet, she was the general counsel of the Dallas Stars hockey team. And we met an event here at the Biltmore. It was a women's conference and we were both vendors. And she makes suits. She left being a lawyer, makes a suit line called a Lotus. She's out of Dallas. And she's like, I really want to get my suits in front of more women in sports. And I started thinking, like, I have a lot of contacts that are like Suns or Cardinals, and the Valley is such a big sports valley. So I was like, what if we threw a party, Alana, and we kind of, we're honoring and catering women in sports. And then we started thinking about the wives and girlfriends, right? Like, no pun intended, but they're keeping all the balls in the air as their
pun
spouse.
Intended,
Yeah,
pun intended. Pun intended. They really are, aren't they?
They're right.
Yeah,
They're
the
keeping
families and everything, all the appointments.
household running. So what if we do something that honors them? Maybe we have some self-care mini spa stations. We have maybe an inspirational guest speaker, live music, food. And then she's a vendor, I'm a vendor. And then other kind of all empowering women. I've been saying this, like, community, connection, creativity, like,
Ooh, I love it.
bringing together. And also the idea of like, well, let's bring the Cardinals wives and get them in front of the Suns wives. I'm sure it happens already, but that kind of cross-pollination of just
They're all going through the
building-
same thing, especially the ones who all just
Yes.
moved here, like following.
Totally. And now we have the G League coming. Those will be new wives to the Valley. And I love, my friends often say, like, I'm a connector. And I love it. I dance in a lot of worlds, and I like to think, oh, Jamie, I want you to meet this friend who's doing this. And then that friend meets this friend who's doing that. And like,
I have all those
think
emails saved. Yes. Yes, I do.
doing this cool thing
Pin
with
to the top.
I love it. I love it. So kind of that idea of everyone gets to meet everyone, and it's synergistic. Everyone benefits. So that's brewing between like me trying to create this sports line and then plan a party with Alana. One of my students, this was amazing. Her husband played in the NBA, and she's a celebrity stylist. And they were coming back to school because they wanted to take more fashion classes. And we've since become friends.
That's awesome.
They're amazing. So I'm like, there's all these kind of like, again, that Zeitgeist word of like, oh, connections. Wait, if I pull her into this party, and just different people related to that industry, kind of all a common thread.
Yeah. Well, you're always thinking of everyone else and how you can work together, and you're very collaborative. And I always appreciate that about you, especially as a fellow Arizona girl, working for the community as well. So I think I heard the sports line is next, huh?
Yes. So I want to work on that. And then Armand being here, we're going to work on that. And we've got a couple other things. I still want to do like a pool tote or such. I mean, we probably could be like a pool tote for like, and kind of that beach to bar, right? You can wear it out at the beach, but it's nice enough that you could use it when you go out to a nice dinner, and a few other pieces. So I'm going to work with him, and I'm hoping we can have this kind of wrapped up end of summer, beginning of fall, and begin to showcase it. And then the party, we're thinking it might be next spring, kind of doing around the spring training. But there are a lot of, again, no pun, a lot of players involved. So we'll figure out what works for everyone. But
you should have been a writer. Could have been a writer too.
I do love words.
Yes, she does. I'm learning new words. I'm writing them down. Google after this. And I've been waiting to get my new bag. So I'm waiting for them. I'm like, keep asking you, when's the line? When's the line?
We have to name that one the Jamie for sure.
I've made requests of what I would like to see. And that's why you love local. I mean, that's why you love the local people who are working together to satisfy a need. I mean, I represent one of how many people who are in the business that I'm in, and we carry a lot of things, and we still want to look like we got it together. And, the bag I carry right now is lovely and all, but it's, I've got paper sticking out of it, things happening, and, it tells a lot about my story that I don't know that I want to put out. Let's zip up that. zip it up just a little bit. I like to ask about the jump. So when you went into business full time for yourself, what were you doing before? What was that jump like? What was that transit? I think you're going to mention with the Barney situation. And so what were you doing, and when did you actually start going full time and relying on what the income that you were creating for yourself?
So that would be, I had graduated Parsons, and then at the Barneys event, I was helping, her name was Kathy Jonke, and she was a local kind of PR marketing person. And she put on this event and I was helping her. So it kind of coincided with right after that being like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to create something that's my business, my brand, and that I have to sell the items in order to, fund myself. So it was right kind of after that. But again, talking about seeing the dots, so many of the things that I did, it was a jump, but it was like a parallel jump, or like the things that I always tell the students, right? There's things that are like, wait a minute, that's going to serve me over here. And the things I was doing over there is going to help me figure out this out. So it was a jump, but there were things that's like so much of this business too is marketing and sales and relationships. And I feel like what I was doing prior was totally all of that.
Setting you up for that.
Yeah.
So what would you tell someone who wants to create maybe a line of handbags, et cetera, as far as getting those doors to open for them? The way you were at ASU, you were in New York City, you were, you had a lot of contacts.
I think this is what I tell my students. I'm like, pay attention to the contacts. I was like, network with everyone. I was like, the person sitting next to you could be your future collaborator, partner, someone you interview, for your business. And so to just always, it really, and especially with fashion, it is a small world. Even being here in Arizona, I had a wild story. Here in Arizona, someone reaches out to me and they're in New York and they had manufacturing services. So I fly to New York to meet them, see their showroom. I'm like, cool. They make me samples. I'm like, they're great. I'm like, awesome. I want to now fly down to your factory in Leon. It's really important that I vet it, make sure there's no child labor, just meet the team. And they tell me no. And I was like, what? Like, if you're going to tell me no, then I don't think we can continue and do business. So we part ways. I fly myself down to Leon on my own, try and just pound the pavement. It's kind of like the garment district in LA and New York. Find my own manufacturer. They were small. I worked with them for a bit, then met someone else and kind of evolved it. Then years later, another ASU student who had kind of become like an intern went on spring break to Mexico City. She meets a guy. She's like, why don't you have a Zoom call with them? I think it was Skype at the time. But anyway, we meet on a video call. And they're like, oh, we already have your bag patterns. I'm just like, wait, what? How? I'm tiny. I'm not Michael Kors, Kate Spade, where like there'd be a chance that maybe we met some other situation. Well, that couple in New York who wouldn't let me see their factory, they were using who I was taught. His name was Caesar. They were using Caesar's factory and just acting as the middleman. And so then Caesar realized what they were doing. He fired them as a client. But
oh my gosh.
I was dying because I'm like, here I am in Phoenix. Here he is in Leon, Mexico. Here they are in New York. It's a small world. So I'm like, play nice, play with ethics, because it will come to the surface, you know? So it really is a small industry in a good and not bad way, in a good way. And like everyone's just a few connections over from where you're trying to get.
Yeah.
But also like if you don't play well, everyone's going to know very quickly.
Yeah. And then you might be stuck holding nothing.
Yes. So I think it just pays to be a good person and be kind and kind of have a backbone and kind of ethics. But I say network, don't be afraid of the climb. Like it's not going to be a straight shot to success, but like that's okay. Part of it is, and sometimes you have to go through A, B, C, D, and E before you can get to where you actually are meant to land. And it won't be a fit and there'll be a lot of hiccups, and that's okay. It was part of the journey, but like learn from it, grow from it, try to stay out of the victim mentality, and then just kind of keep pushing forward. That'll be some of my advice. But yeah, the networking has been
huge.
Tremendous.
And you're good at it. I mean, you're very good at it as well.
Thank you. I love it. I love it because I love people, you know, and I love connecting people. So it's always come back to me as much as I put it out. It always, it gets returned
It's
as
genuine
well.
for you. Was your dad an architect?
He was an architect. My parents were New Yorkers, but they moved out here late 70s. I was born in Arizona, and he was in commercial architecture. Worked on, he worked for a couple different firms in town, but then he kind of developed the Esplanade, Biltmore area.
He kind of developed what? What?
There's other
kind of a major landmark in Phoenix and continues to be one. All right.
So I have his blueprints framed and they're on the wall at my house. And I have a mid-century modern condo and it got featured in the Arizona Republic. And someone reached out to me and he's like, I used to work for Al Beadle, who was a very prominent architect in kind of 50s, 60s, 70s. And he's like, I think your dad's name, it sounds so familiar. I think we maybe were colleagues at some point. I run downstairs, Jamie, and I look at the blueprint that was framed and was like, oh my gosh, I have your blueprint frame that my dad must have worked on something for him and his wife, like a home. So yeah, there's been a lot of those kind of small circle, everything comes full circle moments. Yeah. But I think that love of design and art comes from him, even though he's like, go be a lawyer. He was from Thailand. And I think there was that I'm going to be proud, you go be this prestigious lawyer. And that was not a fit.
I think he would still be very, very proud. Jennifer Boone-Lauren of Soul Carrier, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story. I want my bag.
Okay. I'm going to call Armand after this. We're going to get working.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks for listening to Jamie's Local Love, the podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Serretta. Our technician is Tom Heidinger. Our editors are Lorraine Shearing and Gina Coy. Do you know a business worthy of some local love? Email me at jserretta@azfamily.com. Follow us at facebook.com/Serretta and Instagram @Serretta News. Make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star review, please. And tell your friends about the podcast and the businesses we feature to show your local love. You can find us on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you get your podcasts.
Jamie's Local Love, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast.